This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat, and ready to talk some football with you, and some baseball, and some basketball, and just a little bit of gymnastics. The gymnastics thing, okay, so here's the thing. Gymnastics isn't a big deal until it is. And at Georgia, gymnastics used to be a really big thing. Y'all are sitting there going, we know this. Well, I know it too, because I was covering Alabama in the 90s, and they would pack Coleman Coliseum when Georgia would come there, and Susan Yakelin. And Georgia was like all this and all that. So I've been on this Georgia beat 4 years, and I wait, like, when is gymnastics going to be a big deal? Well, not only is it not a big deal, but the gymnastics team finished in last place in the SEC. And I said, uh-oh, does that mean Josh Brooks is going to be making a call? Because Josh Brooks has come in, and he has changed 4 coaches in 16 months. I mean, Josh Brooks he's not playing around. He said he wants Georgia to compete in championships. Now, this is interesting because this Courtney Cuppets is like one of the all-time greatest ever. Someone actually told me it'd be like if Herschel Walker was coaching football. But when push comes to shove, Josh Brooks is here to win. This is going to be interesting to watch. So I start out there because I'm looking at Georgia, all their sports, right? We're going to talk football tonight, and I'm all over that. And I've got my list of 5 guys that I think have to have a great spring, and then 5 guys that I know will have a great spring. Like, I didn't even put them on the list. Like, I know there's 5 guys, money in the bank, right? And then there's 5 guys that you really, really need to step up. But I wanted to talk about these other sports because I think Georgia has a really good spring going on with baseball and softball. I saw softball, won a historic 1100th game ever, whatever. Okay, good. They're ranked 16th. I want to see what they do in the SEC. I think they took 2 out of 3 from South Carolina. I want to see more. Softball, to me, hasn't proven enough yet, okay? They've got a bad loss earlier this year. I can't remember too. But baseball, I actually went out to Foley Field for a couple games, and I was really impressed. They were playing Mississippi State, the reigning national champs. And Georgia has this ace pitcher. I think he was named SEC Pitcher of the Week, Jonathan Cannon. And if you haven't seen this guy throw, you need to watch because he is really amazing. I mean, he brings it, as Coach Scott Strickland says, he throws 4 different pitches for strikes. I mean, this guy's a major leaguer. He's a major leaguer. And he shut down Mississippi State Friday night. He pitched 8 innings, a 3-hit ball, no walks, no runs, and they won 11-0. Went back Saturday, and they gutted out this 12-11 dramatic walk-off win. Fantastic. I mean, Georgia baseball ranked 18th. And then they had a setback. It was 20-3 Sunday. I said, man, you can't lose that way. They still took 2 out of 3. That's the most important thing. They'll play Georgia State tomorrow night in Lawrenceville, and then they'll play at Kentucky next weekend. I'm tuned into this team because I think this is a talented Georgia baseball team. I think this is a team that's going to make the NCAA tournament. I think this is a team that's going to contend in the SEC. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned all that because those other sports, whether it's the watch on the gymnastics coach, if the seat's heating up, if Josh Brooks could make a move there. And say this for men's basketball. I know that the NCAA tournament's going on and you're either paying attention to your bracket or, you said the heck with it because Georgia wasn't any good this year. There's one SEC team left that made it to the Sweet 16, just one. And I'm a little bit flabbergasted by that. I thought Auburn was really good this year, but they kind of got flaky down the stretch and they ran into a really good Miami team. They're gone. Tennessee, Rick Barnes, I covered Rick for 2 years when I was up there. He's a classy guy. He's a beloved figure, but can't get past this first round, and losing to Michigan is just not even a good Michigan team. That was, I know the Tennessee fans are pretty crushed. I heard him say that, well, Rick Barnes didn't miss those shots. And I said, well, Tom Crean didn't miss shots either. But at some point, you've got to hold coaches accountable, right? And the reason I'm going there with basketball is twofold. One, I've got to get it out of my system, right? I got to say it. And sports writers, and we're all objective, right? But we're human beings too. And I got to tell you, Mike Krzyzewski is a guy that can move me both ways. When you're in his press conferences, I've been the victim before where he's come off on me, and it was pretty funny. And I've seen him go off on other people, and it was pretty funny. But as a coach, does anybody get more calls? Does any team get more breaks than Duke? I'm watching that Duke-Michigan State game, and there's Tom Izzo, one of the classiest guys on the planet, universally beloved. And the calls were so bad, all he could do was laugh. And I felt bad for Izzo. I covered Tom for 4 years at Michigan State, got to know him really well. And I know what a classy guy is, but I also know how he feels about Duke. And Coach K had this white knight image going, and then you find out about Zion Williamson. And let me tell you, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Nothing's going to surprise you anymore, is it? With players getting paid places, nothing's going to surprise you. But to watch Duke get that game in that fashion instead of Izzo, and I just thought, you know what? It irritated me. And I don't get irritated by sports much. Usually it's a job for me. It's an analytical. My pulse rate doesn't change. But I got upset watching the last few minutes of that game because I thought Michigan State really and so I don't know about you, but Duke to me is just like, just get him out of here. I'm just tired of this story. I'm sick of Duke. I'm sick of watching him get the calls. The TV shoves them down our throats. I'm over it. So that's one. Two, basketball part two for me. You know, I'm looking and seeing LSU just hired this Murray State coach. And Missouri hired the Cleveland State coach, Dennis Gates, that we all thought was the front runner for the Georgia job. And Florida hires this Todd Golden guy from San Francisco. I'm looking at these guys' resumes. Mike White's got the best resume out of all these guys. Georgia won the basketball coaching sweepstakes over LSU, Florida, and Missouri. And Georgia hired the most qualified coach of them all. So I think that says something. I think that's interesting. Let's see if this is the start of something really good for Georgia basketball with Mike White. More qualified than Todd Golden, 36, more qualified than 42-year-old Dennis Gates, and more qualified than 43-year-old coach Matt McCann. So Josh Brooks and the Bulldogs landing the most qualified coach of this coaching sweepstakes of late. So I thought that was interesting and certainly worth noting. I don't know how everyone's brackets looked. I didn't do a bracket this year. That's pretty boring. This is the first time, and I don't even know if I have not done a bracket, honestly. But I got busy, you know, Georgia football, covering Georgia baseball. And I guess I just didn't really have a strong feeling about any of these teams in the tournament. So I just wanted to step back and soak it all in. Hey, if you're Kentucky and you're paying John Calipari $9 million a year, how do you feel right now? Wow. Covering the news today, I think you saw that Tennessee got a commitment from California five-star quarterback. They're saying landed him ahead of Alabama and landed him ahead of Georgia. And it's kind of like, you know, yeah, but no. I mean, Arch Manning was on campus at Georgia this weekend. That's Georgia's target in that class. And Georgia's the leader for Arch Manning. I mean, all systems, all signs point to Arch Manning being a Georgia Bulldog. So that's pretty interesting. But Nico Lamaliva, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a five-star from Long Beach, California. He's rumored to be the player who has an $8 million NIL deal waiting for him, $2 million per year. Apparently, you know, there's some speculation that, you know, California kids are allowed to take NIL money. I mean, this is the beginning of something happening. I mean, it's happening. I know some people are in denial. I know people don't want to discuss it. I know people want to pretend like it doesn't affect recruiting. But the reality is that players getting paid has affected recruiting for a long, long time. Okay. And now NIL and collectives, and you saw last week we had Matt Hibbett on, this is doing it above board. This is another avenue. This is another way for players to receive extra benefits above board. Now, I still think players are going to get money on the side. Just keeping it real with you. I don't know of any specific deals, and I can't say this happened for sure. But I've known about deals in the past at different places. It kind of comes out in the woodwork as guys' careers go on, especially now. There's always jealousies and people accusing this guy's only playing ahead of my kid because he got paid so much money. I mean, there's a lot of that. That's happening everywhere. It's universal. I go back, and kind of tattletaling on myself. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I guess this was about, maybe 14, 15 years ago. I was coaching a travel ball team, right? A 12 and under team. And, our shortstop, this is softball travel ball. And our shortstop's parents took her on vacation. I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to the World Series next week. You can't take her on vacation. They said, sorry, Mike, we've had this trip planned. We didn't think we'd make it to the World Series. Well, yeah, we did, but they couldn't. So I had to find a shortstop. I found a shortstop, but the parents said, we can't afford the trip. And I said, well, it's not a problem. We'll pay for your room. Was that an extra benefit? I don't know. Maybe not. Did I commit a violation? All I knew is I had 10 other kids that made it to the World Series, and I had to have a shortstop. So her room got taken care of. A sponsorship, right? It happens in AAU. So I'm thinking same thing. But you get the point. I mean, sports and competition, when you're all in, you're all in. It is what it is. And, you want to give your players an opportunity to compete. So anyway, some thoughts on that. Not real sure. I saw about earlier today that Georgia got a commitment. Jeff Sentell, with more of Sentell's intel, 4-star Florida defensive back Antoine Jackson from Dillard High School. That's down there in Fort Lauderdale. That's a mainstay. It used to be a big Auburn school. When I covered the Auburn Tigers, they had a bunch of guys. They called them the Dillard Five, and they were a real cornerstone on that Pat Dye team that went 11-0 under Terry Bowden back in '93, my first year covering the league. But the first commitment of the 2024 class, and this is a guy that's attached to the new cornerbacks coach, Fran Brown. So very interesting to see that Antoine Jackson has committed to the 2024 class. He's currently ranked as the number 6 cornerback in the nation and the number 43 overall prospect. So a top 50 commit for the Georgia Bulldogs. Also worth noting on Antoine, 4.0 GPA per his Twitter account, and reports a 3.6 GPA so far in high school. Runs track for Dillard High School. And if you read Jeff Sentell's story on DogNation.com, there are some clips. So interesting for the Georgia Bulldogs. Recruiting never stops. You know that. Kirby digs in deep. We've had a press conference with Kirby and some players since the last time I spoke with you. And it was good, right? I think Georgia football is off to a great start this spring. I really like the vibe in the room. I really like the players that we've spoken to so far. And we always try to read between the tea leaves about who Kirby sends out to talk to us. What does that mean? Obviously, it means that these guys are playing well and pleasing the head coach, or he wouldn't send them out to talk with the media. So I was not surprised to see Chris Smith or Kearis Jackson out there on the first day of media interviews, or Cedric Van Pran, or Warren Erickson. I was pleasantly surprised to see Zion Logue out there. I didn't know anything about Zion Logue before the interview and really enjoyed talking with this young guy. Really impressed me. I was not surprised to see Kenny McIntosh out there. You all have seen Kenny McIntosh right here on Dog Nation when Kenny and Kendall did the K&M Squared last fall. Excuse me. When did we do that? Oh, we did it last fall. Yeah, before the season started. So not surprised to see those guys out there. Listening to Kirby talk, the mentality about this is not a defending champion team. This is a team that's looking to contend. All about the mindset, right? not trying to protect something as much as hunt something else. You don't want to be the hunted. Kirby is really big on staying on the hunter terms instead of the hunted side, right? And I think that's going to be really important for Georgia football this next season, because I think it's going to be a tougher SEC East for the Bulldogs to navigate. And it could be even tougher if JT Daniels ends up in the East Division. I haven't reported it yet, but I'll write it later. I meant to write it earlier, but we've had so much news on Dog Nation. I bumped the story back a news cycle. JT went to Missouri on a visit this last weekend, and Missouri held their spring game, and all indications it went really well. So JT hasn't made his mind up yet. He's going to look at some other schools. Really when he chose Georgia, coming out of the transfer portal the last time, it was COVID, right? So he wasn't going around and seeing everybody. In fact, I don't think he could. I think there was a moratorium on campus visits. So, and in high school, I think he only took one official visit. So he's already taken twice as many official visits this offseason as he did coming out of high school. So that's kind of interesting. Might JT end up at Missouri? Maybe. I don't know. I know the visit went well. I think he still has West Virginia ahead. I think there's some other schools that are still on the map for JT Daniels as potential destinations. Looking at the comments here, looks like Sonia Prescott. Sonia is a regular, and she says that I get kind of boring, unlike BA and Jeff. Both really talented guys. Sonia, I'll work on that. Thank you. If you have some suggestions, feel free to email me, send me a message, or you can put them in here and I'll read your suggestions. I'll try not to be so boring. I'll do my best to deliver news in a more entertaining fashion for you specifically, as well as everyone else in here. I want to do my best and not be boring. So thank you to Sonia Prescott. Sonia has followed me throughout my career and at Dog Nation, and she keeps me motivated. People can give you constructive criticism, and so it's always good to hear that. And I expect that from Sonia because she cares about the product. She cares about the Georgia Bulldogs. She has a high level of expectation, much like Kirby Smart. When Kirby talks about his players and their mentality, the one word that I think he hates more than any other is complacency. Kirby is the guy that said, if it ain't broke, find a way to make it better. And I think that was great advice. And I think he goes into the spring looking at his football team like that. I'm looking at these Bulldogs, kind of trying to figure out, who are they going to be? What are they going to be? This historically dominant defense has moved on. I was there at Pro Day last week. There were 14 Georgia guys that went to the NFL Combine that were also at Pro Day, plus John Fitzpatrick, who played last season with some fifth metatarsal stress fractures on both feet. Can you imagine the pain? And how heroic was that for Fitz to play all year, really more than half the year, knowing that he was going to have surgery after the season and he could endanger his NFL status, went team first. So really respect Fitz for that. I hope we can see more of Fitz on Dog Nation in the future. That's a guy that we're talking to, a guy that we really respect. And you may realize also a part of that DGD fund, he has a charity through the Classic City Collectives, just kind of an all-around good guy. But I mentioned Fitz and Julian Rochester, two guys that weren't among the 14 at the Combine that may not get drafted. You never know with Fitz. He gets compared to Charlie Warner a lot. I could see a team taking a late-round flyer on him. If not, he'll certainly be a priority free agent, probably one of these guys that, these teams are already trying to set up a deal with in advance, provided he doesn't get drafted. You look at the guys that are going to get drafted. I think Lewis Cine has really helped himself out a lot. I saw Lewis did the vertical again at Pro Day. Of course, Lewis ran a 4.3740 at Indianapolis when I was at the Combine. I think that really opened some eyes. And then anybody that watched Lewis's interview had to be impressed. And I don't think he did anything to lose that momentum. Channing Tindall, another guy that I think has a lot of momentum, that tested out really well. Channing with that 4.47 40. I mean, let me tell you, that's fast. That's faster than most running backs. And for Channing to do that from the linebacker position and jump the way he jumped, I think he had a 41 vertical. Just incredible athlete. And one of these guys that I don't think they're talking as much about Channing Tindall as they should. And I talked with him after his pro day, and I said, listen, man, sometimes when that happens, it's because these teams, they don't want to be telling everybody who they're going to pick or who they've got their eye on. I think Channing Tindall is a sneaky second-day pick in the second or third round. I think he's a guy that's open. And Quay Walker as well, by the way. Quay ran a 4.51 at 240. I mean, the Georgia guys ran so well, and that speed just translated this last year in that front seven. It was amazing to watch the Georgia run defense last season, watch those Georgia linebackers in pursuit, watch those Georgia defensive linemen with that gap integrity, right? I mean, there were no cutback lanes. There was nowhere to go. Nothing but respect for the Georgia front seven. And now you've got to fill those gaps, though. Now you've got to fill those shoes of those players. And when I come back for the second half of the show, I'm going to get into those 5 players that have to have a great spring for the Georgia Bulldogs. Absolutely have to have a great spring. There's not much margin for error when you lose what I think will be at least 14 NFL draft picks. I see 14 guys getting picked. That would tie the record from one school. LSU set that record in the 2020 NFL draft with that Joe Burrow team. This Georgia team could be just as talented in the NFL draft. It really could. So we've covered a lot of ground. I think it's important to talk about these other sports. I'm sorry that some people say it's boring, but I don't, because I cover sports, and I'm telling you that what I've seen over on the baseball diamond has not been boring. It's been really good. There's a lot of Georgia kids that are playing baseball for Scott Strickland, and that's a really good baseball team. It's an exciting team, okay? Not boring. I think the basketball hire is exciting, not boring. When you're able to make a better hire than LSU, Missouri, and Florida, you've done something, and you need to discuss it. And that acknowledgement as part of how Georgia can generate some momentum to be good in more than just football. And when Josh Brooks was hired, that's what he was charged with. And I get emails and texts from people, and oh gosh, all you ever want to talk about are the bad things. And I talk about the good things, and I have people say, oh, that's boring. Well, I'm sorry. I don't think it's boring. Just because you don't like a sport doesn't mean it's boring to everyone else. That's a really dangerous mentality. And it's why I think Georgia got in that hole with some of these sports. And now I sense a different Georgia fan. Now that you're champions in college football, Josh Brooks wants to be champions in everything. We've seen gymnastics as champions before. They've got some of the finest facilities in the country. They pack it out. They sell it out over there at Stegman. Not boring, exciting, right? So need to open our minds up a little bit and try not to be closed-minded to other sports. That's my message for the day. That's my public service announcement. Now the second announcement, and you guys know what it is, right? It's all about Ingles, right? We talk about opening our minds up. We talk about accepting. We talk about excelling. That's what Ingles does, right? And that's what Ingles has done for us throughout the hard times. You never really know about something or someone until times get tough. And when COVID came and we all had to deal with those difficult protocols, we found out that Ingles would be there for us. They served us throughout. Frontline workers appreciated that, getting us our goods, our services, helping us through a difficult time. Some great momentum for our country right now. We hope we're pulling out of it. Want to take a moment right now to thank Ingles.
It's in our hearts to feel for real. There's been ups and downs, turnarounds, good days and some bad, but we stand together for worse and for better. We'll always have your back, with open arms, heart to heart, hand in hand, community strong.
Oh my gosh. Welcome back. My green tea has got me again. Oh goodness, now Sonia Prescott. She doesn't want to hear about other schools, she says. Sonia, let me explain this to you. Perspective is a valuable thing. Oftentimes, people grow wiser and gain insight from seeing how things are done at other places. I'm not saying that it's always better somewhere else, but you can learn things. That's why Kirby Smart went to coach under Bobby Bowden at Florida State. It's why Kirby Smart came back to coach under Mark Richt. It's why Kirby Smart coached at LSU, Alabama, and the Miami Dolphins with Nick Saban. Those weren't Georgia stops. Those were other places. And he learned, and he brought things from there. Mike White coached for the Florida Gators. He played at Ole Miss. This is perspective. This is valuable. You want to have different insights and ideas and anecdotes from other places, right? When you go to hire a candidate, or when you discuss a sport, or when you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem, what do? You usually consult some experts and people from other places that have a similar experience. And so I like to share those things because I think they're interesting, or they tie in with the University of Georgia. You know, sports is kind of one big network, right? Look at Stacey Searles, for example. Here's a guy that someone might have said, I don't want to hear about him because he's not at Georgia. Well, he is now, and he was before. He coached under Mark Richt twice, once at Georgia, once at Miami. Then Mack Brown hired him away to Texas. Rick hires him back to Miami. Rick gets done at Miami. Searles goes back to Mack Brown at North Carolina. And now he's back with Georgia coaching this offensive line. I want to start with this. I said 5 guys. I guess what I really meant was 5 things that you could count on, right? Because I have 2 players that I would take to the bank on this Georgia football team. One of them is Chris Smith. I love Chris. I love the Chris Smith story, okay? It starts out where he's really not ready to play when the count goes down in 2020 and they throw Chris Smith out there. And he is just, you can see it. He's not physically prepared. He's not strong enough. He's not big enough. He's not hitting anybody in the open field. He looks a step behind, not ready. And part of the reason why they lost to Florida was no Richard LeCounte and no Jordan Davis in that game, I believe, in 2020. So what did Chris Smith do, though? Between 2020 and 2021, he went to work. He went to work hard. He jumped the moment. He seized the opportunity to get bigger, stronger, faster. And sure enough, there we were, opening game of the season, Charlotte, North Carolina. And who gets the pick six? It's Chris Smith with the oil painting moment. And he was having a really good season, rocking and rolling. Late in the year, hurt his knee. Wasn't quite the same guy, I don't think, in the postseason. Still played through it, but I think he was a little off. Chris Smith decided to come back for another year. He's one of the guys from that 2018 class. There's 4 guys left on the team from that 2018 signing class. He's one of them. And he came out the other day. Let me tell you, he doesn't have a neck, right? I mean, this guy has gotten bigger, stronger, 7-8 pounds. I mean, Chris Smith looks the part. This is going to be, I believe, your defensive captain. One of your defensive captains for sure. Runs the secondary. Really like Chris Smith. Think you can count on Chris Smith. Another guy I think you can count on, and this is another player who was injured last year. You remember before the season that Kearis Jackson had the knee surgery. We didn't know exactly what it was. We were told it would bother him a little bit into the season, but he didn't even play receiver, I don't think, until the 3rd or the 4th week of the season. He was back there in the return game. He never really looked like himself. And 1 year earlier, Kearis Jackson was kind of the go-to guy for Stetson Bennett in 2019, if you'll recall. It wasn't until JT Daniels went in there that Pickens started really lighting it up big time. But I kind of expect Kearis Jackson to go back to being that go-to guy, because I think obviously Brock Bowers will get a lot of attention. I don't think you can help but pay attention to A.D. Mitchell at the X. I think AD is a guy that can really stretch the field. And I was impressed with Ladd McConkey. The first game, Ladd didn't look real good, had that drop pass, probably cost Georgia a touchdown against Clemson. But as the season progressed, Ladd McConkey got better and better and better and better. And I really like Ladd now over there. Jermaine Burton used to play that spot. Ladd was actually playing ahead of Jermaine Burton last year, right? And a part of that was Burton was injured and beat up. So two guys right there that I think are money in the bank for Georgia. If they were stock, I'd invest in them, would be Chris Smith and Kearis Jackson. I expect both of these guys to have all SEC type of campaigns. I think Kearis might be a sneaky pick to lead the team in receptions next season. We'll see. There's a lot of options. There's going to be a lot of places for the quarterback to go, whoever that is. I do think Stetson Bennett is going to be the quarterback. I wrote something that some people found controversial, and I'm not really sure why, because we've all kind of seen and heard what happened after the national championship game when Stetson was contemplating his future. And he said he would have to see if he could trust the coach's decisions. I thought that was pretty clear that Stetson didn't want to come back if he wasn't going to be the guy. Georgia at the time was after Caleb Williams, the Oklahoma transfer. They were involved in those sweepstakes. Ultimately, I think they figured out that Caleb Williams was leveraging them for more money before he ultimately signed with USC. I think he was going there the whole time he was following Lincoln Riley. But the fact was Georgia had interest, okay? And Kirby Smart is never going to apologize, by the way, for trying to get the best players to Georgia. So nobody is owed anything. Kirby plays. Kirby goes after the best guys, talent acquisition. But a lot of people, were rubbed wrong by me saying, hey, Stetson needed some assurances. And then later, not because he said that, but later that month, Todd Monken told a group of boosters that Stetson's the guy. He's going to be the guy. There's only so many repetitions to go around in practice. And Monken is a pro guy in the sense of the way he divvies up reps traditionally. Now, maybe, who knows, maybe he'll change the whole thing. But in the past, the number one guy gets the majority of reps. There ain't no, let's split this up evenly. That ain't happening right now, okay? Stetson Bennett is the guy. It's going to be up to Brock and Carson to impress. Don't really think Gunner is a factor in any type of quarterback race, run. I don't even know if I would call it a competition. Now, coaches will tell you that every day you compete, but technically, I don't think there's any mystery to this. I think Stetson's the guy. And I don't know why anybody would view that as controversial, but some people did. I mentioned Smith. I mentioned Jackson. I think the O-line room, right, and I like Stacey Searels. I go back over 20 years. I remember Alabama was interviewing him when I was there. This is a guy who's been highly regarded for a long, long, long time. And again, it's inner circles, it's networks. You hear the same names, the same people over and over. And Stacey Searels was a guy that had a reputation for producing some really physical line play. That's why Mark Richt snapped him up twice. That's why Mack Brown snapped him up twice. And it's why Kirby Smart hired him to replace Matt Luke. And already I sense, listening to the players talk, and they've been very respectful and appreciative of Matt Luke. But the tone with Coach Searels is he's more direct. He doesn't mess around. He's more technical. He gets right to the point. And I think every line is a little different. And I think there's so many guys coming back on this line that I think they appreciate that attitude. Now, maybe if Matt Luke was back, he would take a more direct approach because your coaching style is largely determined by your team's personality. For example, last year, Nick Saban, right? I couldn't believe it when they were interviewing Nick after the Alabama-Auburn game. And y'all remember how that ended with Bryce Young and that incredible, historic 13-play, 97-yard drive, one of the best drives ever in that storied rivalry. And they asked Nick Saban what he told his team at halftime. And he said, I just told him, start doing your best. Don't worry about the result. And I'm thinking, what? Wait a minute. That sounds like something from a youth soccer game. What do you mean, do your best, don't worry? But I talked with some people over there in the Alabama community, and they said, look, Mike, here's the deal. Nick realized that with this particular Alabama team, you could yell and scream and cuss, and you weren't going to get any better results. It certainly wasn't going to make Bryce Young any more receptive to your message. That's not how you manage this Alabama team. And so Saban, coaching genius that he is, adjusted his coaching style to fit the personnel and the personality of his team. Kirby said something similar last week. One of the stories I was kind of working on, and I never really wrote it because it kind of just turned into, okay, that's what it is. You know, Kirby at practice carries a microphone around, and he's on that microphone the whole practice. And he's constantly singling guys out that maybe aren't running from one drill to the next, maybe don't use the right technique, maybe don't give the sort of effort or the sort of execution that Kirby expects. And he'll call them out on the microphone. And the big joke with the players is that you can't hide from the microphone. And, Louis Cena was saying, yeah, it's kind of funny when you hear him, dogging something, but it's not funny when it's you, right? And so I asked Kirby about the microphone. I said, do you think you're always going to be the microphone coach, or do you think there'll ever come a time when you delegate a little bit more and the players don't hear you screaming and yelling or hollering throughout practice? And he said, well, the amount of time that I'm on that microphone actually is determined by the type of team. He said, I really didn't have to be on that mic as much last year when you got guys like Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean and Jamari Salyer. And that's where Kirby, where really any coach wants to get, is where these players are holding one another accountable. Somebody's got to hold you accountable, right? Ideally, when the players hold one another accountable, it's when it's the best. It's also the most effective, right? When you hear something from the boss coming down, you expect it, right? But when your teammates tell you something, I think it means a little bit more. I think you reflect. I think the message goes a little deeper when it comes from one of your contemporaries. And I think that's true certainly in any team building and the chemistry of any club. And that's where I think you got to give Kirby a lot of credit for the skull sessions. Now, when he started that, I think it was at a really good time because our country was going through a lot. Obviously, not just the COVID. There was a lot of racial tension in our nation. The election year, I don't think anybody has good memories of a lot of the extracurricular activity that was geopolitical, whatever you want to call it. Certainly I'm not here to talk about it or get involved in it, but I would just say that I think our whole country was stressed out. And I think that the players were stressed out. And I think the skull sessions and the communication that was happening was a way for those Georgia football players to share their thoughts, their concerns, for the coaches to be sensitive and aware. It was like I said, it was a challenging time for everybody, but young people especially away from home, right? Because a lot of times I think, and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of people draw a lot of their political persuasions and feel the social influence of their parents. And when you're away at college or in the military or wherever, away from home, well, who do you rely on for direction? Who do you share, your thoughts and feelings with? And I think that even though 2020 didn't turn out to be a championship year for Georgia, it was another top 10 year. I think the team got closer, especially the nucleus of this team. And that just continued to grow in 2021. And these skull sessions, the team got close. I think they got to know one another. You heard Kirby talk a lot about everybody knowing each other's why. This was a way that players could motivate one another and support one another when adversity struck. And so I think that was a real key. And it's going to be hard to replace a lot of these guys. That said, circling back, that offensive line, Cedric Van Pran and Warren Erickson spoke last week. And Cedric said they were on some practice fields during the offseason conditioning, and there was championship logos out there, and it upset him. So he told the coaches, hey, that's over with. When you've got a player saying, we don't want to see those championship logos on the field, we want to focus on next year. That is exactly what Kirby Smart wants in the team mindset. That's exactly the mindset these guys have to have. They can't walk around like, hey, we're it. No, that was then. Okay, that's over. It's about 2022 now, right? It's not even about staying on top of the mountain. It's climbing the mountain again. That's got to be the mentality. Warren Erickson, I liked what he said about the SEC championship game. When Fedarian Mathis at the Senior Bowl said the SEC still runs through us. Okay, well, Bama has won, 3 SEC championships since Georgia won theirs in 2017. Is that right? 2, 3. They beat Georgia 35-28 in 2018. LSU won in 2019. Bama beat Florida in 2020, and Bama beat Georgia last year. So yeah, Bama's won 3 of the SEC championships since Georgia won the one they won under Kirby in 2017. And Warren Erickson said, you know what, that bothers us. That's unfinished business for Georgia, right? I like that the players are finding motivation. The media is not saying it. The fan base isn't saying it. Nobody on the outside has to say it. The guys inside the team are saying it. I'm counting on that offensive line. I'm putting it in the books. I don't know how it shakes out. I mean, look, Broderick Jones at left tackle. Who we got left guard? Don't know yet. Center, Cedric Van Pran. Right guard, is it Erickson still? Right tackle, Warren McClendon. Does Amarius Mims find his way on the field as a guard, potentially a tackle? I don't know. That's kind of the big question. It'll be interesting to see. A lot of other talented guys in that room. Xavier Truss among them, another former starter. It's going to be battling to be back out there. But however it shakes out, the offensive line is an area that I just put a check mark next to. Check. They're good. They're solid leaders. Count on them. I'm going to say that about the quarterback room too. And I know that some people would argue that in the sense of maybe Vandagriff or Beck leaves after the spring. I'm not so sure. I'm not necessarily convinced of that, because where do you go? Where do you go that you don't have to compete with somebody? Where do you go that you don't have to start all over in a new system? Where do you go that you step into an immediate national championship system and consideration contender? There's only, how many teams do you think can really win the national championship? 6, 7, 8? Not many teams out there. And all those teams are stacked with quarterbacks. So I don't necessarily know that it's a foregone conclusion that Vandagriff or Beck will leave after the spring. I do think, Stetson's made it clear he's back and he's planning to, play quarterback again. I think with those 3 guys, I think this Georgia quarterback room is solid. I think the Georgia quarterback play will be very strong. This is year 3 of Todd Monken. I think everybody understands his terminology. I think everybody knows the playbook. And I think everybody knows the why behind what Monken's trying to do. And once you understand the philosophy and everybody's speaking the same language, everybody's playing faster. So I think this could be a bigger offensive year for Georgia than last year. I think it'll be more successful. The 5 players that I think really have to have great springs. The first one is Jalen Carter. And, without Jalen Carter, I'm not sure Georgia wins the national championship. I'm going to tell you why. Because if he doesn't block that field goal and it's good, that's a big swing. Remember what happened the play after Jalen Carter blocked that field goal? James Cook went 67 yards. Boom. And to me, that's when the game really turned. It's when the Georgia Bulldogs got that momentum that they needed in the third quarter. Jalen Carter was the catalyst for that. When you talk with Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, some of the other leaders from last year about Jalen Carter, they say he's going to be a great one if he can just, stay focused. He's going to be a great one if he keeps his head screwed on straight. It's like, why are they throwing that qualifier in there? What do you mean if? Like, is there some question about that? And then I think we've never talked to him in the media. He's never talked to the media. Kirby's never brought him out for interviews. And you kind of just wonder, like, when you hear teammates say, oh, he's so talented, he's the most talented, and if he does, why is there any if? This is going into the 3rd year from Jalen Carter. Why are we talking about ifs, maybes, buts? That's a red flag to me. Maybe I'm just being overly cynical or skeptical but you kind of try to keep your ear to the ground, kind of go, I wonder what they mean by that. I think Jalen Carter, though, because of his immense talent, and we're talking about a guy who's got top 5 talent, not top 10 NFL talent, top 5 NFL talent. This guy is a dominator. He's been a difference maker from the time he stepped foot on campus. And it is so rare to find true freshmen that can come in and dominate on the defensive line like Jalen Carter. But that's exactly what he did. This is a very special player. This is a preseason All-American. This is a guy that is going to win games for you. There's not many players, right, that you say, that guy won the game for us. Right? There's plays on occasion. Wow, there's a play, Kelee Ringo play, right? Okay, but I'm talking about players. I'm talking about guys that week in and week out make a difference. I'm talking about guys like Ndamukong Suh, all right? That guy's a difference maker. I'm talking about Najee Harris at Alabama, the plays he made, difference maker. Chubb, difference maker. Guys that can individually take over games from their positions. Jalen Carter is one of those guys. And he's got to have a good spring because coaches will tell you this. And I think Bruce Pearl was the first one to tell me this. But other coaches have said it too. It's so much easier when your best player is also your hardest worker. It makes for a much better team. You want your best player to be your hardest worker, okay? Because the best player is oftentimes the guy that kind of sets the bar for everyone else. He's the guy whose voice is respected. When you're the best, that's who everyone listens to. So very important for Jalen Carter to have a good spring on and off the field, just throughout the program. Needs to be the guy off the field that he is on the field. And I'm not saying that he's not already. I'm just saying there's questions because we don't really know Jalen. And based on what other teammates said, the focus and the maturity are two things that come out. Jamon Dumas-Johnson, they call him Pops. This Mike linebacker, every time I've seen this kid, I think he's played really, really well. And he's coming in reserve roles at the Mike. When he hits people, there's a thud. And I can't explain it, but I guess after watching football 30 years, when a guy hits somebody else, a lot of times you'll hear that crack, right? Pretty solid hit. But when it's a thud, it's almost like it's almost like car crash impact. This guy makes car crash hits. I mean, when this guy hits you, I think he takes the wind out of you. I mean, this kid hits different. I'm just telling you, watch this kid. He's going to blast some people. I see Martin Aranda and Tate Ratledge should be good to go. Not this spring. Foot injuries on big guys can be tricky. I think that they're hopeful that Tate will be ready by the fall. I think they're hopeful. I wouldn't necessarily make the assumption. Foot injuries on big guys, think about how dynamic the movement is from that power position. And I think they're hopeful for Tate. Just wanted to clear that up. Kamari Lassiter is a guy, and you all may remember this, last August when Kirby said Kamari Lassiter was the guy that came in and was stealing the show, right? An impact freshman, kid from Tuscaloosa, 4-star corner. They really, really need him to step up and be that guy at the other corner across from Kelee Ringo. Very important. You saw Amir Speed in the transfer portal. Jalen Kimber at Florida now transferred out. He was a projected starter before Kelee came on. Really need that other corner to step up with Darian Kendrick moving on. And I think it's got to be Kamari Lassiter. That's the guy that strikes me as a player that needs to come in because the Georgia front, well, I think it's still going to be very good. Last year's was historically good. And I think Kamari Lassiter and Kelee Ringo and Chris Smith, I think they're going to have to cover a little bit more, a little bit longer, because I'm not convinced you're going to see the same amount of pressure from that front seven. I still think you're going to see pressure, and I still think you're going to see him be effective, but I think the rest of the SEC East particularly is going to be better. I think everybody's going to take it up a half a notch, if not a full notch, and I think Georgia's defense slips a half a notch, if not a full notch, depending on how some of these young players step up and how some of these returning players evolve into bigger roles, not just on the field, but off the field with the leadership. Again, can't stress enough the accountability that last year's group brought. It sounds like coach speak, but it's so true. I see someone saying there's less pressure. Tennille, no, really, actually, it's the other way around. When programs win a national championship, there's more pressure. And I've seen this other places. And again, I won't bore you because some people don't like to hear about other places. And in this instance, I'll skip it. But when a program wins a national championship, anything less than next year is going to be a disappointment. The attendance won't be the same at the bowl game, right? Is it I went out to the national championship game last year. I'm not going to go watch them in the Citrus Bowl this year. That's a bad season if they're 11-2. Let's face it. If you knew Georgia was going to be 11-2 right now, would you be excited? Some people would say, yeah, but what if I said one of the losses was to Florida and the other one was to Oregon? I don't think you'd be excited. I don't think you'd be happy. What if we said they'd be 11-12-2, and one of the losses was to Alabama in the SEC championship game, and the other loss was at Kentucky? I don't think you'd be happy. I don't think you'd go, well, yeah, that sounds good. No, I don't think so. And it's a dangerous thing, but I see it happen over and over and over. When schools win a national championship, that's where the bar's set now. Oh, they're supposed to be there, right? I mean, think about it. 2017, Georgia got there and was whatever, tick away, play away, call away. I mean, it was flukish that Alabama won that game. In my opinion, I was there. Georgia was the better team. They were the best team in the country. But what happened? 2018 team, played their tails off and fell short in the SEC title game, and disappointment, right? Jake Fromm. 2019 finds a way. They lose all these receivers, and the guys that come in, they got guys getting injured every other week, guys that don't know the plays out there. Fromm is a better quarterback, but the receiving core is worse. He's got a first-year coordinator in Coley. Swift gets hurt at the end of the year. Pickens is ejected, misses the first half, and you're playing a historically good LSU team. And you get drummed by LSU. And, big disappointment. Another top 10 team. They came back and beat Baylor. I mean, that was a good team. That was it was a great effort, especially from Fromm in the Baylor game, Fromm and Pickens. They were historically good together. I think George tied a bowl record, but people didn't, kind of a humdrum, And then 2020, that team soaring and runs into Bama, right? And then loses at Florida with all the guys injured, fights their way back again, beats a really good Cincinnati team that goes undefeated the next year and makes the playoff, come from behind fashion. And it just didn't feel like people were, as excited as they should. And that's because the 2017 Rose Bowl was such a tremendous game. And that team achieved so much that anything less than playing for. So now you've won a national title. And now, to me, based on my experience, there's going to be an expectation there. Now, there's an excitement level there. I think we all go into next year more excited about the program, because even though Kirby said it's not a defending national champ, that's fine for those guys to think that in the clubhouse. But the fan base in the media looks as Georgia as the reigning champions. This is a national championship program, and there's an expectation that goes with that. And it's the highest expectation you can possibly have. And anything less than winning every game is going to be a disappointment. So I wouldn't say there's less pressure. And in some ways, there's much more. That's just explaining that. I mentioned Jalen Carter, Jamin Dumas-Johnson, and Kamari Lassiter, three guys that have to have great springs. I'm going to throw Kenny McIntosh in there. Kenny is a guy that I've known since before he came to Georgia. I went down and visited him and his family in Pompano Beach, Florida, at his home. And just a wonderful young guy. I mean, like I said, you've seen him on our shows. I think you know him like I know him. The Kenny that you've seen is who he really is. But now Kenny has to be in a leadership role. And when I look in the running backs room, I think him and Milton and Dejan are incredibly talented. I think this running back room could be so special. I think this could be collectively the best running back room since 2017. And I know that's saying a mouthful because the Dogs have had some really good backs. but I have very high expectations for this group. I think they have high expectations for themselves, but I think Kenny's got to lead the way. And I know he's worked extremely hard to put himself in this position, but he's just the right kind of leader. Kenny McIntosh is universally liked and respected in the locker room. And going back to what I said earlier, when your best players are your hardest workers, everything kind of cascades down from there. So Kenny McIntosh, a guy on that list. And then I debated on the last one, on the fifth guy that I felt like had to have a great spring. Because you could say Eric Gilbert, and I'm just not ready to do that to Eric Gilbert. You know, Kirby talked about that last week about the media putting too much pressure on Eric Gilbert. I haven't heard that. I didn't hear that last year. I haven't heard that this year. He's back with the team. He's playing tight end. You know, Darnell Washington is out with the broken foot. That's some tough news. You hope Darnell sticks around and Kirby can keep him in the program. There's been some speculation that he's one of the guys looking at potentially transferring. You hope that he sticks around. But having a guy like Eric Gilbert, a talent like that, and obviously it's going to be important that Eric has got his focus back off the field as well as on the field. But the fact that he's back running with the program, he's got this golden opportunity at that tight end spot with Brock Bowers out and Darnell out with injuries. But I'm not going to say that he's got to. I'm going to look at Eric Gilbert as a bonus for Georgia. If he comes through like and plays like he did the first half of his freshman year at LSU, that would be a bonus, right? That would be the icing on the cake, and I think it would put this receiving core over the top. But I think the guy that has to have a great spring, and this is pressure on a young guy, you got to remember, only a sophomore, is A.D. Mitchell. You know, Pickens moving on, and you really didn't have Pickens last year. I mean, you did at the end. He made that spectacular 52-yard catch that set up your only points in the first half of the title game. And just having George around motivates everyone. If anybody saw the interviews George did, you understand it. I mean, he's just a dude, man. He's confident. You know, George Pickens in the huddle, you just feel better about it. You know, George is that can-do guy. You know, I can see why quarterbacks throw it up for him because he convinces you he's going to make the play, and he does. He backs it up. He's going to be a spectacular NFL receiver. But A.D. Mitchell is the guy that Pickens says is next man up. I think that's really interesting because A.D. is such a young guy. But I remember, you know, listening to the JT Daniels talk about A.D. last year at the beginning of the year, or in last spring even, when A.D. had the really big spring game. I was a bit of a doubting Thomas. I'm like, oh, he's just getting all those targets because Pickens is hurt and Blaylock's hurt. No, they said fast twitch muscle, really good, strong off the line. And then on that California trip, so many of these guys, A.D. Mitchell was one of the guys that stayed out there a long time, along with Jermaine Burton and I believe Braxton Hicks. Those were the three guys. They stayed out there a long time and really honed their craft. Mitchell, so impressive. And we saw it in the championship game with the 40-yard touchdown catch. Explosive. Again, very young player, needs to take on more of a dynamic role. I think Kearis Jackson is the leader in the receivers room. I think he's a leader in general. But A.D. Mitchell is dynamic, and so much is how you carry yourself and backing up that skill level with your work ethic and your focus. I don't have any reason to believe he won't. I just look at guys like that again: A.D. Mitchell, Kenny McIntosh, Kamari Lassiter, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Jalen Carter. These are young players that need to evolve into bigger presences, right? You're a great talent, but are you a great presence? And because when you're a great presence, now you're able to impact those around you, right? It starts out with, hey, just do your job, right? Focus. But then as players evolve, they're able to affect the performances of those around them and create an air of confidence. This team had that last year. The Georgia Bulldogs had that. That's what Jordan Davis gave them. That's what Jamari Salyer gave them, that air of confidence. I think it makes all the difference in the world. Let's take a look at some of your comments before I go tonight. I've really enjoyed the show. Like I said, I always enjoy the constructive criticism. It is at times challenging to try to cover so many different topics in such a short window of time. But I think it's important. Again, I say that again, because what I'm sensing here, living in Athens, is the Georgia athletic program is starting to really blossom under Josh Brooks. Josh has some real direction and thought and feeling about more than just football. And when you're winning at all these sports, I think Florida had it going like that for a while. I think Florida's still pretty good all the way around. I think that athletic programs like that, what's the word I'm looking for here? Self-fulfilling, when everybody's a winner, right? And I'm sensing that Georgia athletics is starting to get that and all these other programs. I see Kirby's Visor believes that Kieres can be a force. I agree with that. I think Kirby could be I think Kieres could be a sneaky pick to lead the team in receptions. You remember he was Stet's go-to guy back in 2020. I see Senor G predicts that Don Blaylock will have a great season. I certainly hope so. The injuries last year, it was so unfortunate. He came back from the knee, and then I believe the hamstring got him. You really want Don Blaylock to have that great off season. What else we got here? We got some David Bowie Under Pressure being queued up here by Tony Jackson. Of course, Kirby's going to try to avoid that. I like this too. I think Kirby Visor is right about Ladd McConkey. Again, I like Ladd on the return game. I know Kieres has done that in the past, but I almost look at Kieres as so important out of the slot. And Ladd was so good in the return game. I got a lot of respect. Ladd McConkey's got team captain written all over him. Let's see here. Hugh Nash with a great point about Kenny McIntosh maybe not having the opportunities before. The way they tried to rotate in 4 or 5 backs, it was really hard for any back to get in a groove. And Kenny, I think, is really probably more so than the others, probably more of a rhythm runner. If you look at Kenny McIntosh's style, he's a cutback runner. He's got really elite vision, and he's got really quick feet. You saw that on some of the runs that he broke towards the end of the year. I think that Kenny needs to get into a rhythm, to get a feel for where that backside cut's going to be, where those holes are going to be. And I think you'll see him get more of that. So that's a great observation by Hugh Nash. Really appreciate that, Hugh. Good input. Let's see what else we got here. Joseph Kennedy. Hey, look, Georgia's the champions right now. That's all that matters right now. Certainly for the fans, I think Joseph's right. The bragging rights are there. Hugh Nash says, we ain't losing to Florida. Hugh, it was just a for example. I was saying I don't think Georgia's going to lose to Florida either. Actually, I think there's 2 or 3 other teams more likely to beat Georgia next year than the Florida Gators. I have no doubt that Georgia is a full level above the Florida Gators right now. Especially you saw today Emory Jones going in the transfer portal. What else we got here tonight, guys? Taking a look, more questions, more thoughts. I see some reminiscing from Jerry Dogs fans of Greg Blue. We talk about some big hitters. Hugh Nash, echoing the thoughts on Jalen Carter. Antoine Sampson, are we sure Beck won't go home to Florida? I don't think so. I do see the Gators have some guys in the portal, but they still have 4 other quarterbacks. And Beck has just been all in. I'll tell you, Beck looked really good at Pro Day throwing that football. He really did. I was really impressed. Let's see here. Dylan Bell, a prediction from Hugh Nash on who could step up this spring. Looking for your comments and thoughts, guys. I really, again, appreciate you guys every Monday night. Enjoy doing the show. Enjoy talking with the fans. Tennille says Mike jumped on the bandwagon pretty fast. To the extent that Stet's going to do what Stet's going to do in this offense, he didn't make first team All-SEC, didn't make second team All-SEC. He's not a projected NFL quarterback. But, he was the guy that Kirby turned to quarterback this team. And that's an important position. He got it done. I mean, he had that drive with some really accurate passes. He overcame some mistakes and like 5 sacks and a fumble inside his 20, and he settled down and got it done. Georgia's not overly reliant on the quarterback. Kirby's not looking to win shootout games, and Stet's going to do his best. Stet's determined to play ball. He could have walked away, taken a TV deal, all this money, and the guy wants to play ball. I respect that. The guy's a ball player, man. And, no, I don't think he's the most talented guy in the league. There's probably 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks I'd take ahead of him, if we're being honest, at least. But you know what? He's the quarterback for Georgia. And you can't deny that. And you can't take that away from Stet. And he's got a whole off season to get better as the number one. And he's never had that. So let's wait and see what Stet does this spring. I don't know what version of Stet we're going to see in the G-Day game or in the fall, because I've never seen an offense that from the jump was designed around him. So, and now he's going to have an entire off season as the number one. So I'm not going to sell Stet short going into 2022. I'm just not. So I don't know if I'm calling that jumping on the bandwagon, but it's acknowledging a player that persevered and overcame adversity. And you got to tip your cap to that. It doesn't have to be your favorite player. I've said that. If somebody doesn't like Stetson Bennett or thinks somebody else should be the starter, doesn't mean they're not a Georgia fan. You could say that about any position. You could think somebody else should be starting a running back or tight end or safety or linebacker, right? It's just quarterback is such a talked about position. And some people on the internet are just always looking for a fight or a battle. And, oh, you said this, so that. No, there's no correlation here, okay? A Georgia quarterback situation is fascinating. I think it's very interesting. So on the bandwagon, as far as not going to sell Stetson short in 2022, he did what was needed to win a national title last year. Now, more will be needed next season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now that he can't do more, because I think he can. Now, can he do enough? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Brock Vandagriff isn't getting better, though. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Carson Beck is not getting better. And all indications are that Stet will be the guy. But if Kirby one day goes out there and looks at it and goes, this other guy is so much better, I don't think for a minute that Kirby would hesitate to put the best guy out there. But right now, it's Stetson Bennett. It's Stetson Bennett. That's not being on the bandwagon. It's being a realist. And give him credit. Give him credit. Jerry Popham. Hate to be a wet blanket on the hire, but it happened too fast. Should have happened after March. Jerry, let me say this. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. It did happen fast. But if you missed the first half of the show, at the end of the day, Georgia has a more qualified basketball coach than LSU, that hired the Murray State coach, Missouri, that hired the Cleveland State coach, and Florida, that hired the San Francisco coach. My theory on this, I think Mike White reached out to Georgia. That's what I think. I think he's a guy that Georgia liked. But I think Mike White said, you know what? I'm tired of these Florida people yelling things at basketball games where I don't even want to bring my family there. And I would rather go somewhere like Georgia, where Brooks is willing to put money. The fans are ready to get good at this. I would rather go there and hit the reset button with a fresh start than go into next year on the hot seat at Florida. And I think that was a good move on his part. Kennedy's right. I see Joseph Kennedy. Joseph, I know you are a very loyal and emotional fan, and I know you'll miss Jordan Davis and George Pickens, Nakobe Dean, Zamir White, and James Cook. I think a lot of Georgia fans are going to miss those guys. So feel for Joseph Kennedy there. Understand where he's coming from. And what else we got here? Joseph Kennedy wants to hear how salty Vols fans about tournament loss. No, I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, the SEC got wiped out. Arkansas is all that's left. I would love to see Arkansas beat Gonzaga. And that would be a sneaky pick for me. I kind of predicted that. I'm probably going to be wrong. Love Tony Jackson with the support. And look at Sonya. I didn't see Sonya with the touchdown dance here. She's right. Sonya Prescott wins the night. She got people's attention, and I should have known that Sonya was up to something. Kudos to Sonya. I think this is a lesson for me that when I'm playing poker with you guys, I need to be a little bit wiser and smarter. Sonia set me up. She wound me up with those comments and got everybody's attention on this show. And that's what makes these comments so much fun for me. I used to do talk radio shows and people would call in. And I used to love to interact with the callers. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to try to get something like that going again. I want to hear people talk. I love the comments, but I would love to do more of a call-in show. It's just an idea and a thought, and it would give me time to stop and drink my green tea every now and then. You got to drink the green tea. Look, just so you know, it's green tea. It's healthy and it's good for you. This has been good for me tonight. I miss doing the Friday night mic shows. I was a little bit more unplugged. And the Monday night shows, we've been more dialed in, more data, more information to get out. Can't really freelance and talk like we like to. But tonight I feel like we were able to let our hair down a little bit and share some thoughts and opinions. These comments have been fantastic. Share this on your Facebook feeds to people. They'll want to see your comments too. I like to think that people are a part of the show when we go through the comments at the end. I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect, right? I'm sure most of you know what that is. I'm not going to explain it to you, but big believer in the butterfly effect, and you never know how every comment will affect the future and the mindset. Maybe I'll even write something a little different. Maybe I'll have a different perspective after reading your comment or after our exchanges, as Sonia Prescott proved to you tonight. I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating stuff. So what do we got moving in? Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you guys to do, and many of you have already done it. We've got like a message board. We've got a Dog Nation forum. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I've been posting in there. I put stories in there, but then I'll kind of also tell you a little bit more than what's in the story. And sometimes people will argue with me, right? And that happened. There's a thread in there right now where I was talking about people thought it was real controversial that I said Todd Monken told a group of Booster Stetson's the guy. And some people just blew their mind. But with the kind of comments that we have in here and the viewers that we get on this program on Monday nights, you folks would be great in the Dog Nation forum. And all you got to do, just Google it. Just type in Dog Nation forum and log on and sign in and read some of those threads. It's not just the authors from Dog Nation. There's a lot of message board people in there, and they're really good. They have a lot of ideas, and they'll get on these rants about other teams, and a lot of fan-centric stuff that I think a lot of you would like. And I always, part of what makes Dog Nation so special and successful is that we have so many different forums, right? I mean, we have our Dog Nation page where we post our stories and our content. Of course, we have Dog Nation Daily every day with Brandon Adams at 10 a.m. And then, of course, Tuesday night, Connor and coverage. And you guys see Connor's just doing a whale of a job with his show. I love the graphics. I love everything he puts into it. Wednesday night, Centel's Intel. If you follow Jeff, Jeff's going to keep you ahead of the curve on recruiting, give you the right vibe and feel for how things are going, what's important, what's really important, and what's not. So you have all these different ways to consume the product, whether it's videos, nighttime videos, whether it's Dog Nation Daily, whether it's our homepage, our dognation.com page, our Facebook page, Twitter. Oh, man, always need the Twitter help, right? At Mike Griffith 32. I'm always begging for Twitter help because I get slammed from every time I do Feinbaum, SEC Network, Alabama fans, Florida fans, Tennessee, they're all coming for me. And I've got an army of Georgia people that kind of keep me insulated most of the time. Sometimes they'll leave me out there hanging, right? So at Twitter, at Mike Griffith 32, Twitter, another great forum. I want to work on the calling stuff. I want to work on getting people's voices and faces. I got to talk to the boss about that. That's going to be one of my ideas for this off season. We're already planning our off season. Of course, Connor and I are like, hey, we're right in the middle of football, right? So tomorrow Kirby Smart press conference. You guys know this probably. Kirby goes at noon. There'll be players afterward. Don't think there's anything Wednesday. Thursday, there'll be Georgia players made available. And then into the weekend, I think the Georgia baseball team, that's going to be a headliner as they go to Kentucky, try to take that series. The Diamond Dogs, if you will. So really, and I'll have a story on JT Daniels, right? So I really appreciate you guys watching tonight. It's been fun. Thank you for the exchange. I want you all to have a really safe week. Enjoy BA tomorrow and Connor tomorrow night. And I'll be back at you next Monday night. Have a good one.